We discuss the loss and impact of soccer magnate Rocco Commisso. We update you on which World Cup watch parties will be free. We are joined by Cosmos kit designer Mark Jenkinson. That and much more on an exciting episode of Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. You found your way to Morning Kickaround, the show where we dot the map of the American soccer landscape. How you feeling? Hope you are well. My name is Robert Kerr, local soccer guy. And to my side, it is Jason Davis, radio soccer guy. How you feeling this morning, sir?
Well, it's a holiday for a lot of people, but we're here doing this because we just love it so much. So first of all, thank you to everybody who's watching us on their holiday, on their Martin Luther King Jr. celebration or acknowledgement, recognition. Obviously, my kids are here, tearing around the house, and my wife is off, and I'm here with you, which is I wouldn't rather be anywhere else, Rob. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else except right here with you.
You're doing your day of service with me and the MK Ultras, right?
That's right. That's what we're doing.
It's a day shout out service. To everyone for tuning in here this morning on a cold Martin Luther King Day. I had to swap out. I had my hunker down hoodie on. It was about poofy, about this far up with the fur and everything, but we had to change out of that and get ready for the show. Like I said, we got a big one ahead. Remembering Rocco Commisso. We're going to talk kits for the new generation of the Cosmos, and there's perhaps some renderings to look at out in California.
We are suckers for renderings. This will be a rendering rater. We're going to talk about the news that these renderings represent, but we're going to rate the renderings. I'm so ready for that.
All right, guys, thank you for supporting the show. For not $1, you can click that subscribe button and boost those numbers up. We crashed past 7,000, which is a good number to look at. And then you can also tell a friend. It doesn't cost you a darn thing, but if you're able to, feel free to support us. Become an MK Ultra, where you can get priority commenting to these live streams, bonus content, and access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server, where we have threads and great conversations going on each and every day, from local stuff all the way up to the national teams and beyond that as well. So MK Ultras, salute to you, and join if you are able. You can also support via our fundraising page, Morning Kickaround, at ko-fi.com/Morning Kickaround. You ready for the show?
Let's do it. Let's go.
All right, let's kick our long balls here on Monday's edition of Morning Kickaround. Over the weekend, soccer magnate Rocco Commisso passed away, and many remembrances were made over the weekend concerning his impact on Fiorentina and Italian soccer, but he has many chapters that had an impact on soccer right here in the States.
I mean, this guy's story, it deserves a book, right? And if I had the time and somebody wanted to pay me for it, I might write this book. I mean, and there are people who have covered him in New York, which is where he was from, and obviously now, or most recently, his impact on Italian football, probably better equipped than me. I would like to read this book. I remember, I've been covering American soccer for a long time, and when Rocco burst upon the scene, like Rocco Commisso was the Kool-Aid man of American soccer when he showed up to buy the New York Cosmos. What we're talking about, 2016, New York Cosmos, in a moment where it looked like they might collapse. We had the One World Sport and these other kind of not shady. I don't want to say shady, but there were some things about the Cosmos that were not solid. Now, a lot of this had to do with the business of NESL, right? And there was a real question of the continued existence of the NASL. And you could argue that Rocco Commisso saved the NASL by buying the New York Cosmos. But of course, Rocco was a boat rocker. Rocco was a guy who wasn't going to stand pat, and he had very strong beliefs about how soccer should operate in the United States of America. Now, he was an old world guy, right? Moved to the United States as a kid. his connections to football, to soccer, were through his Italian heritage. He saw the way Italy did it and the way Europe did it, and he thought this is the way we should be doing it in America. And he was willing to put his money down on that idea. And he sued U.S. Soccer. What is the timing on that? What, 2017, Rob? He
Yep.
files a lawsuit against U.S. Soccer. He subsequently made an offer to U.S. Soccer. I will invest $500 million in U.S. Soccer, he said, if you let me sit down with the president and give you my vision and basically kind of not bully, but encourage Carlos Cordero, then the president of U.S. Soccer, to move in a direction that Rocco presumed or perceived to be the better one for U.S. Soccer. And look, this comes down largely to promotion and relegation. I think it's a simplification to say it's about pro-rel, but Rocco's, at his heart, he was a pro-rel guy. And so that he brought that energy to American soccer. Now, obviously, the NASL collapsed under the weight of attempting to challenge MLS. You could argue maybe NASL doesn't collapse if Rocco isn't there behind the scenes pushing things in a direction that was a lot more antagonistic and ambitious. It collapsed. The lawsuit continues. We finally had some sort of adjudication on the lawsuit about a year ago. Rob, in February of 2025, a federal jury found in favor of U.S. Soccer and MLS in the antitrust lawsuit that was filed by NASL, which was backed by Rocco. I mean, he was in that lawsuit. He was the guy making it go. They accused U.S. Soccer and MLS of colluding to hold back the competition that NASL could bring to the table. And we're not going to go into every little detail of all of this, but this was something that hung over the heads of American soccer for a long time. And I don't have, if you're an MLS fan, you could have some ill will towards Rocco Commisso, because you could say, well, this is a guy that came in and made a bunch of noise and caused a bunch of problems and accused MLS of this, and accused U.S. Soccer of that, made U.S. Soccer have to spend all this money on defending themselves in court, et cetera, et cetera. You could find a way to be hostile towards Rocco. If you're on the other side of it, obviously, Rocco's your hero, right? MLS, U.S. Soccer, they for a lot of people, they are colluding, right? They are the powers that be in American soccer, and they're holding it back. I kind of in the middle on this. I don't know. People are maybe not surprised. I talked to Rocco a lot. I liked Rocco as a personality, but I also think that maybe Rocco, in the sense that he had the money to do it and he was a big personality, maybe wasn't as effective as he could have been. Like, there are other ways he could have gone about what he did and impacted American soccer in real and significant ways. Now, I see a comment in the chat. By the way, become an ultra so you can get your comments on screen. We might be getting USL D1 thanks to him. You could argue that like the series of events that leads us to this moment with USL launching a D1 and launching Pro-Rel might, you could put that in the column. Rocco Commisso helped make that happen, Rob.
Yeah, he was definitely the antagonist of modern American soccer. And while you said he did rock the boat, you'd say he was a disruptor of the space. He had enough money to challenge the federation and the powers that be that many in soccer did not have. So he was able to drag that lawsuit out. And while ultimately he didn't achieve the ultimate success of what he was looking for, but he did dismantle quite a bit of structures and did expose those relationships that he found inappropriate as well. So he kind of poked the bear, and he had enough commitment and enough resources in his bank account to kick the can over and over and over again over the course of what, 7, 8 years to get that result, and to the commenter's point, to get us to where we are now. He is a piece in the puzzle that gets us to this exact moment. When he filed originally this lawsuit, when asked about it, this is per an old ESPN article. He says, winning 6 games in 85 years of World Cup competition is nothing to brag about. We are a failed soccer nation. We are then, and we still are now. The USSF has to be fixed. It has to become an independent regulatory agency, period. End of story. That some deals should not exist, and the favoritism towards MLS should stop.
Well, okay. Again, Rocco was on the other side of the coin when it comes. He wasn't part of the MLS group. And now if he had bought into MLS in the beginning, if he was a guy that had influence in the early days of MLS, then maybe he wouldn't feel this way. I don't know, right? Or maybe he could have been a guy behind the scenes who could have pushed MLS in a more ambitious direction, which we're seeing now with people like Jorge Mas, right? So, Rocco could have been that guy. He was not, and he obviously saw a different path. And look, I do not begrudge the man the right to push his vision, right? This isn't to say like, oh, he shouldn't have sued U.S. Soccer. If there was antitrust, if there was trust-like behavior, if there was collusion, if this was something illegal under the system of laws in America, then of course he had every right to sue. He had every right to go after U.S. Soccer and MLS. I will point out that one of the funnier thing, funny, I don't know if this is the right word, one of the more interesting elements of the story about Rocco's lawsuit is that it came out during the trial or during the process that Rocco Commisso was on Twitter with an anonymous account bashing U.S. Soccer. He had a burner and Rocco couldn't help himself from going to Twitter to take shots at U.S. Soccer, at MLS. So, he was, because he knew some things about the discovery and some of the other elements, and he was involved in the lawsuit. Of course, he was saying things that were like, oh, somebody, who's this person that knows something about the inner workings of American soccer? Rocco Commisso was a character. The world is poorer for his passing. I'm not necessarily always on the side of billionaires, but Rocco had his quirks and he had his things. But man, I enjoyed interacting with Rocco when he was around in a major part of American soccer. Of course, when it became clear that the lawsuit wasn't going to move quickly enough for anything real to happen in American soccer, and obviously Rocco was spending money hand over fist year after year to keep the lawsuit going, he of course bought Fiorentina in Italy. He dived in head first into trying to make Fiorentina into a power of Italian football. It's not going great this year. Obviously, his passing is now obviously going to be a part of the story for Fiorentina in 2025, 26. I remember he talked about how difficult it was to get things done in Italy. Everything's old, and they have rules. You can't just tear stuff down because it goes back to the medieval times or to the Renaissance. So he had some frustrations there. He became more of an Italian soccer figure over the last couple of years than an American soccer figure. And, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't remark and acknowledge his passing.
Yeah. Do you think that some of his quirks might have been some of his undoing, or is he just the leader of a kind of a big organizations and relationships to overcome? Because like you said, the burner account and some of the stuff that he said on the burner account was you'd maybe file it under petty or very personal, or
that's never a good look.
Character slandering sort of a territory. Do you think that's kind of what maybe underdid him, or is just the timing who he was and compared to who he's battling?
Well, I think that they weren't able to prove what they wanted to prove in court. It didn't measure up to the level that Rocco claimed it did, at least in court. Again, I'm not telling you that U.S. Soccer and MLS didn't collude against NASL. I don't know for sure, but the law says, or the decision was, they didn't do that in a way that was going to lead to the change that Rocco wanted to create in American soccer, right? And again, he talked about pushing U.S. soccer in various ways, and he was creative in that way. But again, he was also like a lot of people with a lot of money who think they can just get their way through out of bullying or certainly throwing their weight around with their money. And the fact that he went to Twitter to bash U.S. soccer, that's bad judgment, right? That's his emotional stake in what was going on in American soccer probably hurt him in the end.
All right, Rocco Commisso, soccer magnate, both in the United States and over in Italy, passes at the age of 76. All right, we're going to move right along. Let's keep it moving. Our next topic on today's show is a World Cup topic. So I'll remind you that World Cup coverage is brought to you now by Oakland County FC. They are celebrating 10 years of summer soccer in Southeast Michigan in 2026. Visit Oakland County FC online for more details. So over the weekend, Atlanta joined the group of cities that announced that their FIFA Fan Fests will be free of charge, and people's hackles up quite rightly when New York, New Jersey announced that they would be the first sanctioned FIFA Watch Party Fan Fest that would in fact be charging fans. So since that news in New York, New Jersey charging, Kansas City, Houston, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Vancouver, and Toronto have all said the Fan Fest will be free.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is just part and parcel of the destruction of the idea of what the World Cup is supposed to be by this current administration of FIFA, right? This current FIFA. Now, the World Cup was given to the United States before Gianni Infantino became president of FIFA. But he has done everything he can to leverage this tournament happening in North America into a way to just fill up those FIFA coffers, squeeze American soccer fans and people traveling to America for every single dollar possible. And it is so ugly and so gross and so outside of what the tournament's supposed to be, what the game is supposed to be. And I know there are cynical people out there, and I tend to lean into cynicism quite a bit in my life, but there are cynical people out there who say, well, this is just how it works now. Like, what are you going to do? Every sports team is a business. Every sports enterprise is a business. They're all trying to get as much money as possible out of us. But that's not how this is supposed to go, right? We can acknowledge that while this is the way it is all gone, and FIFA is clearly trying to run with the pack that is every other sports business on the planet, trying to get as much money as possible and thinking nothing of the traditions of the game, the spirit of the game, the people that are actually supposed to be serviced and you know, brought together through the sport. Even if they're just running with the pack, we can acknowledge it's wrong. We can say it's, I mean, we're talking about fan fests here. And yes, some of them will be free. It's such a funny thing. It makes it like, oh, the ones that are free, good for them, but you can't applaud that. That's standard. That's just that's the bare minimum of what you're supposed to do with these things, Rob.
So devil's advocate here. So these cities are being put upon to host an event that could go on as long as 6 weeks, provide a tech setup, security, and FIFA has restrictions on what sponsorships and what other sort of vendors they can include in these to make it difficult than it could be to recoup money. And the reports are saying that in some of the bigger cities that these fan fests could cost about $1 million a day to operate. That seems high, but according to front office
Hold
sports,
on, wait a second. Do you know who has the money to pay for the fan fest, Rob? Who has the money to pay for the fan fest? Why does the city have to pay for the fan fest? Why does FIFA, and this is not new to this tournament, but why does FIFA, why do they come into a city? Why do they demand that the city pay for security, block off entire regions of a city in order to benefit FIFA? Why is FIFA demanding that they not be taxed on any of the money that they make in a given city? Why is FIFA doing all those things? Because that right there speaks to what's happening here, right? That this is about lining FIFA's pockets. And, you know, you might say, well, that doesn't go into the pockets of the individuals necessarily, but absolutely it benefits everybody that works with FIFA to have FIFA just raking it. And again, they are taking advantage of countries that want to host the World Cup. And look, I'm no fan of Rahm Emanuel, generally speaking, but good for him. Good for him for saying, no, Chicago's not doing this nonsense. We're not letting you suck us dry and say, oh, but it's the game you're getting. No, that's, again, if you can't handle organizing the world, you already are sitting on a pile of cash. You're already that dragon from the books on top of the pile of gold. Like, you're already there. Why do you need to do this?
And that's a good point about Rahm Emanuel. I forgot about that. A former mayor of Chicago, for those who don't know. But yeah, when the opportunity to host Chicago was very vocal about saying no, thank you. And it's definitely a missing dot on the map for the World Cup. I think some people that haven't been paying attention assume that Chicago is a host city, but some of the regulations and some of the allowances and some of the rules that FIFA is imposing on host cities is pretty onerous. I remember there's basically like a commerce, like an unquestioned commerce period where like I think we're probably in that time period where FIFA can do like any kind of business they want. And then they'd have to take down all the sponsorships and billboards in certain areas and basically like take over the city economically and physically for the duration of that host time. So that is a big ask from FIFA to put on local jurisdictions and just cities in general. So it's a big ask. So you can see why maybe there's a little bit of hesitancy for cities to jump in. And I should say that host committees have petitioned for hundreds of millions of dollars in funding from for federal and local governments to help pay for the security. And in this front office sports says in one extreme case, the San Francisco 49ers have promised to cover any deficit the Bay Area hosting committee cannot make up.
Yeah. But again, this is what FIFA does. They go, we're bringing the world sport to you. And then basically saying, oh, for the good of the sport, for the good of your community, other people should pay for everything. Even though FIFA is going to rake in money hand over fist through ticket sales and through their sponsorship deals, and again, through making cities sign these agreements, which ultimately benefit FIFA dramatically over the cities where the games are happening, FIFA's not willing to put their money down to actually make it accessible in the way it should be accessible. And I am seeing people say, why do we need official watch parties? Just go to a bar. Yeah, go to a bar. Like meet up with your friends, try to organize. But there's something to be said for thousands of people in one place celebrating that together, right? Now, going to the game is one thing, but if you can't spend the money to go to a game because FIFA has made that nearly impossible, then going to a watch party is the second best thing, right? I've gone to plenty of bars and watched games and been around strangers and celebrated the big moments, and that's great. But there's something else about the energy of a crowd. You're not getting it in the stadium. You can get it from thousands of people together in one place, in a park, watching on a big screen, enjoying those things. And again, I don't know. This genie is out of the bottle and we're not putting it back in.
Yeah, when you think about watching the World Cup and the celebrations, for American related stuff, I think about that town center in Kansas City. I think they call it Soccer City or something like that. But the celebration of goals there looks like an incredible moment, and I get a little goosebumps thinking of that.
Power and Light District or something like that in Kansas City. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that looks like an incredible experience. Like if you're not able to be in the stadium celebrating, that looks like an experience worth having. Like I said at the top, Kansas City, Houston, Atlanta, Philly, Vancouver, and Toronto have all confirmed their fan fest will be free. But places like Atlanta and I think one or two others will have upgrade experiences that you can pay for. But there are 9 other host cities that have not confirmed the status of the watch parties. For example, it's referenced here in this article in Front Office Sports that Seattle intends or intended that the fan fest be free to spectators. So there's still 9 cities where it's up in the air.
I understand somebody is talking about Jersey. So let's put Chris's comment here because he's an ultra. Don't like it, but living in New Jersey, do not want taxpayer getting stuck with the bill. New York City gets cash and glamour. Jersey gets the bill. Okay. I understand that in some of these cases, these localities are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Right? You want to do the fan fest. FIFA wants you to do the fan fest, but you're obviously talking about significant money, as you said, to organize and security and traffic control and all the off-duty police officers and all that stuff. I get it. Again, it feels as though there should be a better way to do this than pushing the bills onto the hosts in these situations when we're not talking about the game in the stadium and like. I don't know. Again, this is complicated stuff in terms of who should pay for what. It just feels though FIFA is taking advantage of us, and that sucks.
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely trying to get the squeeze wherever there's any juice remaining. So the remaining cities, Seattle, Miami, Guadalajara, Mexico City, and Monterrey have not yet made it clear whether they will charge or not. And as we wrap up, I'll remind you again that Morning Kick-Around's World Cup coverage is brought to you now by Oakland County Football Club. They're celebrating 10 years of summer soccer in Southeast Michigan in 2026. Visit Oakland County FC online for more. All right, we got more to cover today. Let's move on to the next one. All right, MLS franchise sale alert. Late Friday night, SKC Sporting Kansas City was sold to minority owner Peter Maluk, and the stake is estimated to cost around $700 million.
Well, the team is valued at $700 million, right? So the Illig family, who have owned the club forever, since the beginning of the Sporting Kansas City era, certainly, and helped build the stadium there in Kansas City, they will remain minority owners, but Peter Maluk is buying the majority share of the club with the valuation at $700 million. That's my understanding. If I'm wrong about that, Rob. And this is a record, I think, for an MLS team, but that's because not many MLS teams have been sold, and those have been sold have been in, I think Real Salt Lake got sold a couple years ago, and that valuation, I don't 500 something million. By the way, that also included quite a bit of property and 2 stadiums and all that stuff. I think you get the stadium here in terms of Peter Maluk. It's tough to know. Peter Maluk's story is that he's a Kansas City guy, baseball guy. I read that he was a visiting clubhouse attendant for the Kansas City Royals when he was a kid, when he was a teenager. He dreamt about playing baseball. Didn't happen. He said he played some soccer, wasn't very good.
I like that note.
But he's obviously involved here. And rather than speak for Peter, and this is a very short clip, but this is what I grabbed from local television in Kansas City. Let's listen to this.
Sporting KC has a new majority shareholder. Peter Maluk, the Kansas City native, has been a minority owner for years and wants to see the club return to its former glory.
For me, it's going to be a very, very big commitment. I mean, it's going to be going into every year. There will be no such thing as, as a rebuilding year or a off year. It's going to be every single year. How do we compete?
That's a statement right now. Look, you say that, now you got to back it up, because you can't tell the fans, I'm going to go for it. We're really going to spend money and we're never going to rebuild and we're going to be trying to win trophies. And then, oh, actually this year, we got to be a little bit more careful with the money, or you just don't buy the player. You don't get the DPN. You don't put the money down. People will call you on that. So Peter Maluk has set the bar very high for his stewardship of this club from a financial perspective.
Yeah, he's putting his toes on the ledge, so to speak, with his investment here. And I'm sure SKC supporters will be excited to hear those words. Obviously, he has to back them up, but it seems like SKC has been in a rebuild year for half a decade at this point.
Yeah, I mean, obviously just fired Peter Ramirez, and he was the furniture in Kansas City, so this is a dramatic change. They brought in Raphael Wicki. Lots of people very skeptical about that hire, but, they, I guess, give the guy a chance. They've tried to spend some money, and it hasn't gone as well as they would have liked. Alan Pulido, that kind of thing. They've had some really bad teams the last couple of years. And they started couldn't win one in their first, I can't remember what it was. They went 3 months in the beginning of the MLS season without a victory. I think it's always going to be tough for a team like Kansas City. Now, Major League Soccer is built with parity in mind, and you should be able to at least compete and get into the playoffs and those kind of things. That's a smaller market, obviously. But if Peter Maluk is willing to spend money, even in a smaller market, then maybe they can compete, because there are ways, obviously, to work the rules to your advantage. I just, again, you try to marry, what is the potential revenue for Sporting Kansas City compared to, say, LAFC or Inter Miami or things like that. In MLS, it might matter more what the pockets of the owner are and the ambitions of the owner are than what market size you're in. So there's that. But MLS has moved in a direction where we're seeing haves and have-nots and ambitious clubs and less ambitious clubs. And so can KC actually, make themselves into a power, or is this going to be okay, every couple of years, Kansas City might be in the conversation to potentially be near the top of the standings and maybe win an MLS Cup, which I think, if you're a Kansas City fan, I think is an improvement on where you've been. So you're okay with that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, but a new era ahead, ? For Sporting Kansas City as a minority owner. Peter Maluk becomes the majority owner, bringing in a new ownership to Sporting Kansas City. All right. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, help support the show. If you want to step up that support, become an MK Ultra, just a couple bucks a month, become a channel member. You get priority commenting to these live shows. You get access to bonus content and access to the Morning Kick Around Discord server, where we have great conversations from local soccer to the national team and beyond. All right. We got a great guest waiting in the wings. So we're going to get to our next topic, our next segment, Countdown to Kickoff with the New York Cosmos. Welcome on in. It is Countdown to Kickoff with the New York Cosmos here on Morning Kick Around. And as the graphic said, it is 54 days until the new generation of the New York Cosmos hits the field. And we want to know what they will look like and how they got to that look. And to detail the path to that 2026 look, we now welcome kit designer Mark Jenkinson. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, good morning.
Good to have you, Mark. Appreciate you coming on and joining us to walk us through the process here. Mark and I had a little bit of a back and forth in the email, and the guys over the Cosmos, Eric Stover and Diego, they were saying, maybe we talk about the team on the field. And Mark was like, yeah, focus on that. And I was like, no. Super important. Everybody loves a kit, Mark. You come on, this. This is part of our culture. We live and die with what our teams look like on the field. So I'm fascinated to get into this with you. First of all, how did you end up doing this for the New York Cosmos, this new edition of the New York Cosmos?
Okay, so Eric reached out to Sean Francis, Asbury Park
That's
FC.
my guy. That's my guy.
Yeah. I've known Sean for 26 years, since he came over on Boonek to London, and he ended up in the architects I was working in at the time. And through him, he would come out on a Friday night, bring the people he was rooming with out with him. I ended up marrying one of his roommates 6 years later. And that's how I ended up in Philadelphia. Right.
Okay.
So he was asked by Eric, because they had connections through MLS Insider and Red Bull. And he was asked by Eric to get involved with the branding aspect of the project. And he said, I know a guy. So as Eric had said, I know a guy, Sean said, I know a guy. So he brought me in. And he was very vague at first. And he kept saying, I've got this job for you. You're going to be perfect for it. You're going to love it. It's going to be everything you've ever, all of this sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, what is it? He goes, can't tell you. And so when the paperwork finally dropped, I was like, oh my God. Because I grew up in the northwest of England, right? So seeing the Cosmos in the pages of Shoot magazine in the late 70s and the early 80s was huge. It was so glamorous. The American way of life in those days for us we're going through the period of the, Thatcher, and stuff like that. We had the Toxteth riots in Liverpool. We had the miners' strikes. We had Billy Elliot dancing. All of that sort of stuff was going on. And then we're looking at these things. I've got a Suicidal Tendencies album in one end with, palm trees and the white vests and stuff and the bandanas. And we're like, that's a world away from the way we look, the way we live. And then I got the Cosmos with all of the celebrities and all the razzmatazz and the glitz that went with it. And it was just like, it was kind of entrancing looking at the pictures. Because we all know what Anfield looked like. We know what Goodison looked like. We know what the other stadiums look like. But then seeing this was just like a whole different world. At that point, we hadn't even got the NFL in England. That didn't come over till a little bit later. So when this arrived, it was like a complete grail job. I'm like, yes, I need this. I want this. Not that I need it. There's plenty of other designers out there, but it's like, I want this.
A little bit of pressure then. A little bit of pressure, Mark.
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I talked about when we sat down for the first meeting is responsibility. We've got to have kid gloves here, but we also, we don't want to go in and we don't want to trample all over the legacy. We don't want to do something that's completely different because, when you go online, concept designers are 10 a penny. They're everywhere. Right. So we see plenty of people with their ideas of what the Cosmos should be rebranded as and things like that. And, during my research, I saw a lot of that stuff. And that's great if you want to do that kind of thing. But when you're faced with it, reality on your desk, the actual brand equity in that mark is so strong globally that we can't really do, we were refining it. We were just bringing it up to modern standards because, with the typeface and the way it was drawn, because in those days things were drawn and then used enlarges and then used photo ready artwork and bromides and ruby liths and all of that kind of stuff, bringing it and modernizing it, especially with the digital first kind of approach these days, which I know not everybody's on board with blending. And, and that was a real important thing to try and do that, not change so much of what we've done or what has been done in the past, evolve it, and make sure that for modern channels, it translates really well.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and plus behind that's just the logo. Behind all that is the whole branding exercise, which is what Eric's talking about with the community aspect. And, so we were very, very careful with what we did in terms of setting the line in the sand and the kind of the day zero kind of thing, or the year zero, or whatever you want to call it, of how we can use local artists to bring the personality into the work that's going on with the Cosmos brand, because it is a very, very new approach that Eric's proposing in terms of the whole community aspect in Patterson. So yeah, these are just the slides that we went through some of the things. I mean, you'll see on one of the slides, it's a 50-page manual with it. Well, the actual brand side of it is very, it's like 20 pages. It's here's your colors, here's your typefaces, here's your logos, here's your do's and don'ts, and all of that sort of stuff. But then, because we don't have any other assets at that point, we have to kind of fabricate a fake scenario going through of using them, of how we would use them and apply those rules that we just written as a templated example of what to move going forward. And that's really down to the design team now to follow them or come back if there's something they don't like or don't agree with. These are things that were agreed through the process. So, it's a standard branding project, but in terms of the process of, getting from A to Z, but there's a lot more heartfelt emotion in it, because with a lot of these kind of brand projects, if you go look at any big corporation and you look at the branding, they say the same buzzwords.
Yeah.
Oh, we're authentic, and things like that. Well, you show me you're authentic. Show me you're passionate. Well, with this, I think what we did was, when we put together some of those design principles and the words of what we are, they actually really meant something. They had some vibrancy to them, and they really connected well with what we were trying to put together.
I see Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, so you've got the brand narrative up at the moment, which I've got a few stories about this.
Oh, I want to hear stories. What do you got, Rob? You wanted to ask Mark a question, Rob?
Well, I was going to say, I see part of the explainer was simplifying to Cosmos rather than New York, and I was curious if that was a story, but it sounds like you have some of your own.
Well, not in terms of that. I mean, that was something that was put on the table. Let's just be straight about a lot of this stuff that people discuss on the boards was on the table. We were talking about it before they were saying things. It's almost like they don't think we have those conversations and we go off into a silo in a vacuum and do these things. We don't. We have very long conversations. It's a very long process, and it has a lot of stakeholders and a lot of people involved. And so we have to listen to everybody, and then we have to collate and disseminate the information that comes in and try to streamline it into a way that articulates most of the points of view. So the one thing with this, I personally have an absolute disdain for brand narratives. Right? Especially with soccer crests. It's a shield, strength and forthrightness.
Right.
Whatever. It's a shield. It's a soccer kit. It's a badge. Oh, yeah. This line through the middle indicates the two halves of the personality, the logical and the emotional. Bollocks. Right.
We've had a lot of that on this show, Mark, because we've a lot of new clubs in American soccer, and they're all doing it. This is the river, that kind of thing.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, you see a lot of this online with the concept artists, and they're following what they've seen without really understanding where that kind of comes from. So this was kind of done very much kind of tongue in cheek, as not disrespectfully, but like, Richard Navy, it just prints better. Do I need a better, thing than to say than that? Why have you changed the Navy? Well, it just looks better. It prints better. Right. So people were online to say that this sounds like really bland. This is just like the worst kind of narrative. It's like, what do you want me to do? It's the Cosmos logo.
Right.
It already has meaning.
Yeah,
I'm not changing the meaning of it.
Yeah.
What I'm changing is the execution. So, the one thing that we did do is we removed the outer border from the shield because we didn't want a wall around it. And that seemed to get lost on people. They were taking the proverbial out of that online of some of those things. But again, it's done with reverence, but also there is a thing about it where it's like, why do I need to justify the Navy when it prints better? The yellow and the blue kind of relate to Passaic and New Jersey, but the yellow and the green ties back to, Brazil and Pele back in the day. The fans actually come from the Atlantic logo because of the brothers that founded the Cosmos, right? So these things are already there. I'm not reinventing the wheel for those, and I'm not changing them. But we did change the execution. We sort of sharpened up the angles. We did have conversations about the star ball because of
I was going to ask about the ball because that's an iconic NASL image that you're carrying forward into a modern era.
Well, what we did was obviously we've got the UEFA conflict now with the star ball there as well.
Yeah.
So the old NASL, and we wanted to retain at least some personality of that, just to look back. So we just retained the single star in the middle. That was it really for that. But we got rid of all of the lines. It's if it's going to be embroidered, it's got to look good. And some of those old ones, you're going to end up with an embroidery patch about this thick. We've got all these new techniques now, like the tatami that we've used with the silicone on the shirt. So, understanding those techniques of manufacture, understanding the digital first, understanding where this has come from, understanding the roadmap for where it's going. I mean, these are all part of the process.
Yeah. So your job, it seems like you're a modernizer of the look. More than anything, like you said, you're not reinventing the wheel, but you're bringing up to the modern era. And so, what are the in design terms? What are the tenets of modernizing?
Well, I hate to use the phrase because we're now got a movement trying to back away from it, but digital first. That's where all your engagement is happening. So your logo's got to work at 150 by 150 pixels. If you've got something that's a very, very convoluted coat of arms, it just doesn't work. And then you have to have reduced versions, and then you got 3 or 4 versions of the same logo that you have to use and we don't want that. You just want the one version. You've got a reverse outvert, a monochrome version, and you've got a color version, and that's it. Light background, dark background. We don't need any more than that. Well, let's not overcomplicate things, because sometimes this is going to end up on someone's desk who doesn't have a huge amount of design training and has to use it. The first thing I said when we released the logo was it's already being misused.
Designer's worst nightmare, eh?
Oh, that's terrible.
On podcasts and things, people were removing the white border.
Okay. All right.
Jason, you didn't do that, did you, Jason?
I hope I did not. I did use the logo for, talking about things dropping. Hopefully I didn't do that, Mark. So, if I did, I apologize.
No, you didn't. You didn't. But I think what people were doing were picking it up off the ones that had a white background, just doing a remove background in Photoshop and not realizing that there was actually a border around it.
Right. And then that is a hazard these days because everybody's using that technology to clean things up. So absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, all the more reason for these things to be available somewhere, either on the club's website or something, so we can, download the clean version and use it. And I'm not a design person. I'm just like trying to make something decent for us. I know we could talk about the logo for a while, but again, I think bringing you on to talk about kits is really the story here that we wanted to get to, because there is now a jersey that people can buy that has the new logo on it. So
yes,
you sent me over these images. And this is the story, I guess. Hopefully I have them in the order you gave them to me in, and we can walk through this, Mark.
Okay, so there is hundreds more of these. Right? But we've got to be careful what we show, because there is elements in the others that we have which will give away what's going to happen in the away and the third shirt.
Ooh.
So there's little elements here which are just alluding to what's coming. But one of the first things when we sat down around the table was, what is a Cosmos shirt? Right? So if you look back to what happened between 2012, 2020, the Inaria, the Under Armour and stuff, I like those shirts, but to me, they never ever felt like Cosmos. For me, the Cosmos is going back to 74, 75, those eras, and looking at those. And so, it's a green shirt with a white collar, or a white shirt with a green collar. What can we do with that with the modern, let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? Demand for things to be completely different and wild. And so we started off with the white shirt, which is the original kind of home shirt. And we started bringing in some of the other colors and seeing how they would work. So it started with a white shirt, and then we started layering stuff on. One of the things we were talking very much about was, what can we have that's architecture that's ownable? What is no one else using right now? And I think we kind of got there in the end, but it'll be more prevalent in the away and the third jerseys where that will come into play. But but on the current jersey, the architecture is already laid out there for it to be followed.
So let me ask you a question about because again, you sent me these and you said they were in this order, and you said it started with a white shirt. That's obviously a fairly, again, I guess it is kind of a mix, right? There were white shirts in the Pele Beckenbauer era, and they did have a sort of specific Cosmos look. So your inclination immediately was to maybe try to go white. I mean, I just the thinking around white first rather than green first.
Well, we went to green first after that. We looked at the white and we decided no, because too many other teams are using white as part of it. So we went from the white, and then we looked at navy, and we started to bring green in. And we're looking at very traditional stuff, pinstripes, sashes. We didn't go with a sash because LA Galaxy kind of owned the sash, right? In terms of the kit design, I don't think anyone's really done pinstripes in the American landscape recently. So that was something we were looking at on the table, and that is kind of what springboarded into where we ended up. But we were looking at some kind of ownable architecture. So when we got to this point, we just said, look, this is what we're looking at. So we're looking at the 73 to 75 home and the 75 to 76 away. What can we do with those, those two designs to come up with something? And, working with Capelli, I mean, I'd already done these as part of the brand process. So then when Capelli were brought in, I shared what I had. They shared what they'd done, and we kind of melded in the middle. So we went to some 80s kind of stuff. And again, it felt a little bit too much like what had been done in the 2010 to 2020 era. So they were discarded. And then we looked at some things that, maybe the checkboard is something we could use as an ownable device, and we discarded that. And we went through umpteen rounds of designs to get to something that we kind of liked. And then we kind of happened upon these. And that's where it kind of stemmed from. So right back at the beginning, we were using gradients. The idea of a shooting star kind of thing was the gradient. I've done some space shirts in the past, and I've used gradients quite nicely on them to illustrate movement and things. So the gradient became something that we carried through. The pinstripes was something everybody liked, but it was pinstripes. So how could we take that? So we turned it into a tonal stripe. And then we looked at the gradients of how they interact with the green itself. We looked at inverting them so that there was no conflict on the logos. We looked at doing the two on the outside going in the opposite direction. We looked at halftones. We looked at hard edge graphic. We looked at straightforward gradient, which is the one on the left, which is what we went with in the end. And that's where we ended up to where we got to. I put the sponsor on it because we don't have a sponsor yet, so
Right.
just putting that on to give an idea of the breaking up of the green in the center, because most shirts are never meant to be seen without a sponsor.
Yeah, it's odd these days to see anybody without a sponsor. I mean, those Chelsea shirts look boring because there's no sponsor on them. But at the same time, like there's a purity to it, I imagine, from a design standpoint.
There is. It makes it a little harder, but as with all kits, you rise and fall on how good your sponsor can be. You have a crap looking sponsor, your shirt's not going to look good.
It's a good point.
We went through it with the union for years, battling to not have that big bimbo patch before they reneged and went with the cutout individual letters, and they allowed them to be in single, the monochrome or in a silver or a gold, depending on the application, and that made the shirts 10 times better in terms of integrating the sponsor with the actual design of the shirt. So the funny thing was, when this was released, reading the comments, I don't know why I do it, but I have to.
Glutton for punishment.
I mean, well, you want to see how things have been received, but of course, no one's in the boardrooms when these conversations are taking place, and I see it all the time on the brand websites.
Well, there's also a selection bias, Mark, because the people who comment don't always represent the general public.
That's true.
That's what that is.
I saw a great comment. I wish I could remember it. That someone said about Twitter the other day. What was it they said? The pure concentration of the foolish. And I was like, that's pretty much it. Yeah. And the thing is, were these naysayers always out there? Probably, but they didn't have a channel to be able to put it out there. It's like, now everyone's going to hear me.
Now, obviously, again, this is a different challenge because of the history of the club, and you're building on something. You're not starting from scratch. But I try to give as much grace as I can, being a reactive soccer fan, when I see a logo or a kit drop and it's just, that's boring, or they did too much, right? Because I know you're never going to make everybody happy. You're never going to find the perfect thing that's just like, oh, it's brilliant. And so you're trying to be true to whatever your remit is. And obviously in this case, your remit is to honor the Cosmos brand. So I'm interested to see the third and the away, since you're dropping some hints for us here.
Yeah. I mean, as I said in one of the conversations I had with someone, we're not forward medicine. We don't have pink flamingos. We don't have those wild shirts. That's not the Cosmos. If we'd have done that, Cosmos purists would have been, why haven't we just gone with a plain green? The irony was, when this dropped and people were, I was reading the comments about it, Admiral dropped a legacy collection with a plain green shirt and a white collar, and everyone's like, oh, that's amazing. And you're just like, what's this? It's exactly, we put some other stuff into it, obviously, but I personally really like it, but I know what it represents, and I know where it's come from, and I know where it's going. And it's very hard to stay quiet about those things, because it's like, well, I know, sort of thing. And but that's not my position to be able to, it's not my right to be able to do that, to go in and say these things. And so it's very difficult trying to keep especially with some of the other things that have been happening around the Cosmos rebrand, which I've seen on one of your other shows. And that was fraught while all this was going on.
So there's 54 days until the Cosmos kickoff. When do you think that these other secondary and third looks might come available?
I would probably, I honestly don't know. I would have thought they would be coming out somewhere around about February or March, or at least be released to be shown.
Right. Okay.
We were prototyping them. I stepped away when my contract finished, which would have been in November when all of this was done. I wasn't involved with the logistics or the manufacture of these.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Just the design.
Which we know was part of the reason they came out when they dropped was, and when we talked to Eric about some of these things and sort of that process too. I mean, that's actually making them or actually getting to a point where you can sell them is different than designing them, clearly.
Yeah. And I have my own kit manufacturing business on a much more smaller level than Capelli. I mean, we were both at the US Soccer Conference convention this week. They had a 40 by 40 booth. I had a 10 by 10.
Sorry to get to come by and see you, Mark. I love that place. It's one of the weirdest places in the world, the exhibition hall at the coaches convention.
Yeah, it was good. It was really good. My personal brand got really good feedback, but I learned a lot about what we're doing and what people are responding to. And it's funny because when you look at the list of the top 10 shirts this year, they're all really, really plain. They've gone for classic, and then it becomes a question of tension between materials, construction, and all of those different juxtapositions that aren't a graphic. And that's what makes those shirts so special in terms of the ones that are, it's the attention to the filigree on the patch, or a little something that happens on the collar. It's those small attentions to detail that make things memorable. Like for me, one of the things that I was kind of blown away by was the Brazil shirt for the World Cup, that when you took it off the button, it made a little Brazilian flag with the button being the planet.
Oh, wow.
So there's little moments of joy like that are hidden within shirts. And it's those things that become memorable, and it's those things that make them desirable. And there's so many different techniques. You got the debossing, you've got the jacquard patterns that go in there, and it doesn't have to be in your face, but it's when you pick it up and you feel it and you get that tangible quality, and it's right there in front of you. And that's why the Liverpool green shirt this year has just gone down gangbusters, because it's just a green shirt, but when you get the authentic and you look at how those stripes are done with the pinholes, they're not printed stripes, they're just pinholes in certain sections of the material. And you're just like, that's makes it worth getting the authentic.
Yeah, those are some very nice little touches, very detail oriented. And that's one of the things that we love about kits is there's so many different angles to view it, from up and close into your hands. What does it look like when you're in the stadium? And what does it look like when you're on television in the broadcast view? There's all different ways to perceive these kits and ways to view them. There's a little bit of a tangent, but you're like these details and hidden things. What did you think of it when the Las Vegas Lights had the emoji on the inside of the shirt?
Oh, I have that shirt. I don't know. Do you know that shirt, Mark? They had
not particularly.
Do you remember? I can't remember which Spanish club it was. They did.
I thought it was Las Vegas Lights.
Well, no, it was. I'm telling a different story, Rob. Let me get to that. So there was a Spanish club years ago that had Burger King as a sponsor. And what they did is they printed the face of the Burger King on the inside of the shirt. So when the players celebrated, they could lift their shirt up over their face and it would be the King's face. So the Las Vegas Lights did something like that a couple years ago, which is what Rob is talking about, I think.
Right. I've seen the ones where they do that and it becomes like a ninja thing. It's a gimmick, innit? It's a gimmick. It's more about, those little. Yeah, there you go.
That's the Las Vegas Lights that Rob was talking about. They did some weird stuff. So
I was on the Charlie stand at the convention this weekend, looking at the Oakland Roots stuff, and they did a really nice job on those. The detail on them and stuff, especially on that the third kit? It's kind of like the bronzy greeny. It's kind of the muted colors.
I have a couple of Oaklands. I don't have that one, but yeah, they do a great job. They do a great job.
So it was interesting going around talking to people from Kelm, talking to people from obviously Capelli, because I know them now. Talking to people from, there was another brand there that I've never heard of before that had the biggest stand called Artin. Aretyn. And all of the staff looked like models, male and female models, and they were all dressed in like light gray and white. and the stand was white, and they had white sofas, and they haven't done cross country, obviously, because that's not gonna last well. Because they got
That's not
people
gonna last.
running,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was my first time doing it.
I
And-
didn't know about your brand. I went over to your design website and found your brand, your shirt brand. So I might look into that. So Mark, great story. I mean, I don't know, Rob, is there anything else we want to ask Mark, or we've gotten a lot out of him today?
Yeah, thank you so much for breaking it down. Okay, so just a simple wrap up. How long did the whole process take to design these shirts, and how many prototypes did you go through to get to that final one?
Well, the whole process of because I look at it as a project. I was brought on in May last year. The brand was released in July. I think I signed my contract early May. The brand was released July. Was it June 10th? July 10th? It was a very quick process with the brand side, just the
Right.
logo.
Yeah.
And then the rest there's another part of the execution side, the creative expression side of the branding. And that's when the kits started to kind of happen at the same time. So I would say the kits probably a lot faster than it is with Adidas. When I worked with Adidas, it was 18 months, but we were doing these within 6. And prototypes were within, probably the first prototypes were coming in after 3 months, maybe 4 months. It was a much more expedited process, but I was working with MLS. I was on the Philadelphia Union by You crew that did the blue and yellow lightning shirt.
I got that too.
Well, that was a process where we got to see behind Adidas's doors.
Sure.
That's the one.
This is the one. This is a great shirt.
Yeah, that's a beautiful shirt. And thank you for the explanation and breaking it down. Love to see all the alternate arts and the process that you went through. So Mark Jenkinson, working with Capelli, and your design company is Lime Pickle. And I suggest everyone check out those designs.
And Bastion's where he's making the kits. So go get your custom made kits from Bastion.
We do a lot of supporters groups. So
there you go. That's
all right.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Mark,
right.
thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mark. 54 days until the Cosmos will walk on out to their home field for their new season in 2026. Hang in there. Subscribe if you haven't already. Become an MK Ultra if you haven't already as well. If you are able, we're going to come right back in just a second. Got one more segment on Monday's edition of Morning Kick Around. To the West Coast we go for soccer under construction here on Morning Kick Around. The Oakland Roots are one of 2 finalists to redevelop the Howard Terminal location in the Port of Oakland. They're competing with Industrial Realty Group, and the Roots Chief Real Estate Officer Lydia Tan says our proposal is a 2-stage proposal. Phase 1 would be a modular stadium, very similar to the Malibu site, but with a bigger 15,000 capacity. But then eventually, to right size for them, they will then go to phase 2 at 25,000 capacity stadium. That is the goal for the Oakland Roots.
My mind's exploding. Rob, a second division soccer team in America is talking about building a soccer stadium. They're bidding on a site in a town like Oakland. They're talking about, I mean, that's a magic number, modular stadium, 15,000. That sounds like a number, an important one, maybe for being a first division soccer team in America.
Yeah.
I think if PLS is in play, and obviously going to 25,000. That's how many MLS teams have soccer specific stadiums that are smaller than 25,000? There's a number of them. There are several. And I think that is interesting that they're aiming at that. Now, all this is just plans, and it costs money, but not nearly as much money to build, to plan a stadium. So, it's kind of easy to like dream big. Delivering is different. Now, again, as you said, based on what we understand, there are 2 bidders on this, 2 proposals, and Oakland is considering them. This is the site It's blocked off in the white border there. It's an industrial site in a port. Okay, so what do we want it to look like in the end? Renderings, Rob. Are you ready? Do I need a drum roll? It's not quite Clang the Clanger, but it's something like it. Look at this thing. Look at this beauty. Now, as renderings go, this is stellar stuff right here. This is beautiful. It's right there on the water. Okay, maybe it's a little, again, maybe the area's a little industrial right now. Maybe it's not the prettiest place compared to other waterfront stadiums, but they've got like this park area, this entrance area. Look at this walk up to the stadium with the lights and the architecture. I don't know what the ultimate price tag is supposed to be on this building, Rob, but I imagine it can't be cheap to build there on the port. I hope this happens. I mean, if we're dreaming, I hope this happens. Oakland Roots have been one of the more remarkable stories in American soccer for a number of years now. We just talked about their kits with Mark Jenkinson in our countdown to kickoff about the Cosmos, because he was crediting them for what they do with Charlie, who makes their kits. But the Roots have also been a team that has consistently tried to level up. And at first it was, we're going to take over the Oakland Coliseum, and what they got 20,000 fans out for their opener, right? Last year, we talked about this on this channel, the record that they set for the crowd there in the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. And now they want to build their own soccer stadium, and they want to aim for 25,000. Just, again, mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah, there isn't in this press release, there isn't any total costs listed. Just the story is more the selection process that they are moving into. But obviously what you're seeing on screen, absolutely gorgeous stuff, and kind of a soccer and a stadium utopia sort of thing being described here visually for us. But we should remember that there's a lot of ifs and thens in this statement,
sure,
because there's a whole modular 15,000 person modular stadium in between in the interim. So they're banking on growth to a 15,000 capacity. And then by the time everything works out, hopefully the interest and everything will go up, and then they will be able to then fill an even larger 25,000 person stadium. And if we remember earlier in the year, the Roots were playing in the former Oakland A's stadium, and those first opening games, they had, I think, 20,000 plus people there, which, they opened up more sections of the stadium than they had originally anticipated. Interest and ticket want for the lack of a better word, demand, that's the one, was higher than they imagined, but that significantly tapered off as the season wore on.
Yeah, look, and look, there's the big event attraction. And American sports fans, Americans in general, love a big event. We show up for a big event. It's why, regardless of all the nonsense around it, probably the World Cup's going to be a massive success in terms of fans in stadiums this summer. And when you say we're doing this big thing, we're opening up the Coliseum, you celebrate the soccer team, you can get people to come out once, but that conversion rate is tough. That's why this is interesting, and the ambition of it fascinates me, because if you say we're going to build a 25,000 seat stadium, your belief clearly is that you want on the regular draw close to 25,000 people. Because if you don't think you can get to 25, you build it for 20. If you don't think you get to 20, you build it for 15, and you stick with 15. And even 15 in second division soccer is a massive number.
Yeah.
Right? Like we have like 2 or 3 clubs that are averaging 10,000 or more on a regular basis in the USL. Am I wrong about that? Maybe I'm understating a bit. Maybe there are a couple more than a handful, or a couple more than a couple. Maybe it's a handful.
It's not the standard, though.
We're not talking. And so this is very much a, if you build it, we think they will come situation, right? Like, and maybe the idea is we'll be first division, or maybe the idea is promotion and relegation will drive interest in our league because USL is instituting that, because this is not an MLS building. Oakland Roots are not aiming for Major League Soccer and expansion into the biggest league in America. They're saying We think we need a 25,000 seat stadium to play in the second division right now, and maybe a first division, but clearly a less glamorous first division than has existed in MLS or in America for a long time with MLS. So is this a statement about the strength of soccer in America and specifically in Oakland? Or is this folly? Is this over your skis? Is this being a little bit too head in the sky with what you think is possible in Oakland?
I think what we're seeing on here is a best case scenario. And I think that it's valid what you said. It's like maybe that 25,000 person stadium comes back down a bit in the future, because this is almost like a future proofing sort of a plan. And the phase one of their plan is the modular stadium for 15,000. So that's already an upgrade of what they're doing. And so keep in mind what happened in Sacramento. That modular stadium that's supposed to be temporary went on for quite some time. I mean, obviously that's working out and they're going to get a stadium now, but there is no guarantee that phase two, they even get to that. But I think that the timing for Oakland for soccer could be interesting that they're doing this. The Roots, they've bounced around to a lot of locations and a couple different leagues, and they are still seeking to actually, pun intended, plant their roots. And Oakland sports fans have had a tough few years. They lost their NFL team. They lost their baseball team. And so now the soccer team that seems to be working in earnest to lay down some roots are now going for a stadium plan. And how does that all play out with all the other major league teams dipping out? Also, the Golden State Warriors are also leaving.
That's true. They already did, right? Playing San Francisco. So George is saying, I think owners are estimating the paying demand. Now, I think that's possible that there's just we believe. I also think it's possible that they're trying to will this into existence, right? They're trying to brute force this. And in some cases, you're talking about stadiums for teams that have proven they can get a lot of fans. And maybe if you build a fancier stadium in a new development with all the extra stuff that goes around the stadium and you create that environment, you build that audience, right? You're saying, well, we already get 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 out on a good day. If we build a nicer stadium and it's a better experience, we'll get 3, 4, 5, 6,000 more people to show up, right? Now, obviously, you have to put a winner on the field for people to want to come, and you have to make it worth their while and all those things. But I imagine that there's some thinking to that. Now, there's also just a sense that this is all a bubble, right? This is all a race to build. And again, real estate plays, and I'm not accusing the Oakland Roots of leveraging their place as a civic enterprise representing the city of Oakland in order to get their hands on real estate for non-soccer reasons. I mean, I think this is all tied back into their idea that we want to be a big-time soccer team and we can build a stadium if we can get the financing. But of course, again, no guarantees you're going to be on the regular drawing 20 or 25,000 people. And I went and I checked, Rob. How many clubs in 2025 average more than 10,000 fans in the USL, Rob? How many? How many clubs?
I think 2.
Zero clubs average more than 10,000 in 2025 in the USL Championship. Sacramento Republic averaged 9,800. Louisville averaged 9,750. New Mexico United averaged 9,400 in a baseball stadium. Indy 11, 9,400. I mean, Oakland Roots, 8,375, which was obviously juiced by that big opening weekend number. And so, yeah, again, you're talking about building stadiums that don't always fit the clubs as they currently exist. It is just, we think we can do better. We think we can draw more. And again, I don't know how much of this is being pushed on them in some cases by USL as USL chases that first division dream.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Are they future proofing or is this all folly? We'll see what this turns out to be.
I want it to happen. Come on, let's do it. Let's build this stadium because I want to go out there and see what they're doing in Oakland. I haven't been yet, and once they build this place, I'm definitely going to want to go.
So to the ultras we go. George, he's suggesting starting with a 5K stadium, building it up from there.
Right. So again, I also think that you should remember that if these teams, if these organizations build these stadiums, oftentimes in partnership with their local communities, in some cases getting tax breaks, and it's not actual money coming in, it's over time or getting a favorable lease, the stadium can be used for other things. Right now, again, I can't speak all the time to how the money flows back into the community, But if you build a 25,000 seat soccer stadium in Oakland, you're not just playing soccer in that stadium, and you're not just doing Oakland Roots. They have a women's team. There are concerts that are going to come to town. There are other things you can do in that stadium to fill up those dates. So building a 5,000 seat stadium fits your club's identity in some cases, not in all. And again, maybe Oakland could do better than 5. So say 10, building a nice 10,000 seat stadium, but you are limiting yourself. And you're also creating, as you said, a future problem, because if you do outgrow your stadium, now what do? Tear the thing down and build another one? Or try to design the original stadium so it can be expandable? But of course, that's going to be a half measure towards a proper stadium that fits 20 or 25.
Thank you to Mr. Bob. Earlier in the show, we had a busy episode today. I want to say thanks to Mr. Bob. You have been very generous and contributing to this show regularly. So thank you so much for your support. He's not a MK Ultra yet, but Andrew in the comments saying Portland's fan culture is built around downtown stadiums and lack of other options. Could the same work in Oakland? It's a risk, but could it work?
I'm assuming it means Portland, Oregon, because of the state where that stadium is. Yeah, I mean, I don't know Oakland well enough to speak to that, but obviously that's what they're hoping for, right? They're hoping that they can create a vibrant hub for not just their soccer community, but sort of the entirety of Oakland. And then, people start to fall into the fandom, not because they're soccer fans and they come from a soccer passion perspective, but because they're Oakland people, they're Oaklanders, and they really want to support something Oakland. And I know Oakland Roots has done a good job of doing what is the trickiest thing, which is getting people who don't care about your sport to take on your logo and your identity as part of their civic identity, right? Something that is like, I'm from Oakland. Do I care about soccer? Maybe not, but I will wear Oakland Roots stuff because it looks like Oakland to me and it feels like Oakland. And now I'm repping for Oakland.
Yeah, no doubt. And we will follow this story as it progresses, but potentially big development for the Oakland Roots, working on a part of land downtown on the port, competing with, you'd say that I said at the top that they are competing with Industrial Realty Group. That sounds like a tough adversary for real estate, but we shall see if the Oakland Roots get their stadium facility in order. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to Monday's edition of Morning Kicker, and thank you to Mr. Bob for the contribution. And if anyone's watching this and you hadn't subscribed yet, just hit that button. Doesn't cost you a darn thing. Helps the channel out tremendously, though. If you want to throw a couple $1 dues over to Morning Kickaround, you can do so becoming a channel member or super thanks, or our fundraising page at ko-fi.com/morning kickaround.
Again, the basic thing, please, the simplest thing to do is to tell people about Morning Kickaround. Like, let people know that we're here. Spread this across the internet. Spread this across your friends group. Spread it across the fans of the clubs that you support. Just spread it out. I mean, we can't get you like cards or anything, but you actually do have a QR code somewhere that you can share. If maybe we'll post that on the YouTube and people can grab that and just, hey, scan this. Here's Morning Kickaround. Go check it out. And again, the next level is obviously to become an ultra and support the show and become part of that community and help us dot the map with our supporters across the country. The map is growing. The dots are multiplying. Is that the right word? Do dots multiply, Rob? They're like rabbits, those dots. We want them to be like rabbits.
We want to add density to the map across the whole.
We want a dense map. Yeah, I'd like my map to be super dense. That's what I'd like. Yeah, and then obviously, look, if you want to throw us a little bit of money to help us grow the show, improve the technology, and improve our ability to do more things, find people who can help us do more things. We're always looking to grow. We want to do in-person shows. We want to do live on-location shows in 2026. And right now we have nothing lined up, right? That's going to require either some capital from our end or the help of other people. And right now that's not something that's come together. Well, obviously it's a World Cup year, so we're all trying to figure out, we're all scrambling together to try to figure out how to take advantage of that and get the product out there. Like grow the game, like as a community, grow the sport of soccer.
Yeah, raising awareness, because there are pockets of people all across this country that care deeply about their own club that exists, or hoping for their club to come to their town, or even the club that already exists for some growth to come. And we'll still see what happens across the way. And I was on the Fort Wayne Footy podcast last night, talking to those guys about Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Nice.
They were asking about USL League One and what to expect as they transition from an amateur team to the pro world. And I kind of explained dotting the map to them, and just how so many different places want to be in their seat, going from their USL team, taking it to pro. It almost seems like just a couple years ago, that's a fantastical dream, but it is becoming a reality in places like Fort Wayne, Corpus Christi, and the various others joining USL League One. So shout out to those guys. The dot is thoroughly, or the map is thoroughly dotted there in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with those guys from the podcast. And obviously Ryan Schmelzer, one of our most dedicated MK Ultras. I thank you to Ryan for linking us up with Fort Wayne Footy. But this week on the show, I believe we have another installment of Countdown to Kickoff coming off. I think we should probably on Friday put more of our Ultras on the map. There's a couple suggestions in the Discord server about dots to be added. So I think that'll play out as the week goes.
Let's do that. Let's do it. Let's dot the map. I'm all for that.
All right. Look out on our channel for more episodes and more videos to drop, but we will be back live on Wednesday. So until then, everyone stay safe, take care of each other, and enjoy your soccer.